Hello, I'm Ben Miller, and welcome to this special session of the Festival of Discovery. I'm going to be talking all about my books. So I've got a few here to chat to you about. This one was the first one I wrote. That's called The Night I Met Father Christmas. And then I'll be talking about my two most recent ones, How I Became a Dog Called Midnight. And I'll be reading you a little bit from that. And then this one as well, The Diary of a Christmas Elf. Um, first things first, I think I probably need to tell you a little bit about who I am. So I've got some pictures here that might jog your memory. I was in a film called Paddington 2. There is a prize to anybody who can remember which character I played in Paddington 2. I did this event at a school last week, and somebody put their hand up and said, "Was it Paddington Bear?" It wasn't Paddington Bear. I played the Colonel. And if you can't remember who the Colonel was, he was the man with dirty windows. Paddington came and cleaned his windows, and when he looked out of the windows, he saw the lady that worked at the sweet shop opposite the newspaper stand, and they then fell in love. I was also in this film, Johnny English. In fact, I've been in two of the Johnny English films. I was also I was in the first Johnny English film, and I was in the most recent one as well with Rowan Atkinson. I play a character called Boff, and I'm basically Johnny English's assistant. Whenever Johnny gets into trouble, Boff gets him out of it. The only problem with Boff is he's not a very good leader himself. So whenever he's left in charge, as he is sometimes, things go really badly wrong. So those are two of the films you might have seen me in. I started life though as a scientist. I studied physics, and I actually wanted to be a scientist. And then I got into comedy later on, and I used to do a comedy show with Alexander Armstrong. I don't know if you know who that is. He's the host of Pointless. I don't know if you've seen that show. It's on about tea time. But we did a sketch show together where we played lots of funny characters, and we did that for a long time. And then when we stopped doing that, I started writing children's books. And sometimes people ask me, what gave you the idea to start writing children's books? And I'd have to say that was really having children, and also really loving books. When I was little, when I was growing up, my parents were English teachers, and we had lots and lots of books at home, and we did lots and lots of reading together as a family. And that's one of the things that I'm really, really in favor of, is reading together as a family, particularly the kind of books that I write, which are for ages sort of 7 and up, really. 7 to 107, I like to say. So these stories, they really are written to be read aloud. And in fact, I'm going to be reading a little bit to you later on in this session. So yes, the first book I wrote, as I say, I wrote a book, started writing children's books because of having children. And my children are actually the characters in the books. So here's a picture of my 3 kids holding their own 3 books. The first book I wrote was this one, The Night I Met Father Christmas. That was for my oldest son, Jackson. He's the main character in the story, and it's a story about a boy who waits up to meet Father Christmas, gives Father Christmas quite a surprise, as you can imagine. Father Christmas twists his ankle, and then Jackson goes with him to help him deliver all the presents. And as they go, Father Christmas tells him the story of how he became Father Christmas. The second book I wrote, I don't have a copy of it here, but here's a picture of it. It was called The Boy Who Made the World Disappear. That was written for my middle son, Harrison. Harrison, kind of how to put this, had a bit of a temper at the time. So the story is about a boy who goes to a birthday party, loses his temper, at the birthday party, and instead of a balloon, they give him a black hole on a piece of string. And I don't know if you have heard, but a black hole is basically something, it's almost like a sort of hole in the universe, and when you put anything into it, it won't come back. So the boy starts putting all the things that make him angry into the black hole. It's brilliant. So in go, in goes the school bully, school dinners. Eventually, he puts his parents in the black hole, and the rest of the story is about how he then tries to get them out again. And then my third book was written for my daughter, Lana. That's called The Day I Fell into a Fairy Tale. And Lana really loves the book Alice in Wonderland, about a girl who goes down this rabbit hole into this magical world. And so I wrote her a story about a girl that goes to her local supermarket and finds a trapdoor in the pick and mix that leads to the land of fairy tales. In fact, it leads to a whole mix of of Lana's favorite fairy tales. So Sleeping Beauty's in there, Hansel and Gretel is in there, and she and her brother Harrison have to kind of save the day. For my fourth book, I basically ran out of children, so I wrote my fourth book, which is this one, How I Became a Dog Called Midnight. I wrote that about our dog, Jet. And I've got a picture of Jet here that you can see. She is enormous. She's a black Russian Terrier. And to me, she looks a bit like a man in a bear suit. So I thought I'd write a story about a boy that swaps bodies with a dog. So that's what happens in this story. A boy swaps bodies with a dog and then discovers, because of course he's a dog and he can overhear conversations he wouldn't normally be able to listen to. He discovers that there's a plot afoot, that a baddie called Clive is basically, well, up to no good. And he and his friend Coco have to try and stop Clive, the villain, committing this terrible crime. And yes, so that brings me to my most recent book. This has actually just come out. I mean, it just came out a few days ago. It's called The Diary of a Christmas Elf. And in a way, this is me going back to the first book that I wrote, because some of the characters that are in the first book are also in this story. And this story is about an elf called Tog, who really wants to step up and get a job in Santa's workshop making the toys for Christmas. But what he hasn't really anticipated is that making toys for Christmas is very difficult. He's got to learn all about plastic injection molding, digital electronics, all sorts of complicated things. And he sort of has to discover his own talent for toy making, because we can't always do things the same way that other people can do them, but sometimes we can find our own way of doing them that's just as good. So it's sort of a story about that. Tog and his friend Holly then discover there is a plot to steal Christmas, which they have to foil. Just want to say a little bit actually about my illustrator, who's called Daniela Terezzini. She's Italian. She draws the most brilliant pictures. So this one here, I'll just see if I can show you this. This one here is, that's a picture of Father Christmas there making a speech right at the start of the story. I've got a great one. This only arrived this morning, funnily enough. I've got a great one here where you can see the toy factory. This is where Father Christmas's house is here, and this is a disused shoe factory, because the elves used to make shoes before they became Santa's elves making toys. And so you can just see there through that iron gate, and there's Tog there looking through the gates. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to hold it really close. Anyway, I think Daniela's illustrations are amazing. And when I'm writing the stories, as well as reading them to my children a lot, so that I can get an idea of whether of whether the stories are as exciting as I want them to be. I also, Daniela also sends me sketches of her illustrations, and that sort of really helps me come up with the characters, just get the fine tuning on the characters. Here's a really lovely drawing she's done of Tog and Holly skating at the end. So yes, in terms of people often ask me, what's your process for writing? So I try and use places and people that I know in my writing. So I live in the countryside, and I write a lot about the countryside and rural life. And I also write about the people I know, my own children and my dog and all the rest of it, so that I have inspiration for the stories, so that I feel like I don't have to make anything up. That's part of it. And then the other part, as I was saying, is working with an illustrator like Daniela. So you see her drawings, and it gives you a whole other, it gives you a whole other wave of inspiration as you think of as the world starts to become real and you see it sort of drawn. It's amazing. Yeah, I absolutely loved doing this book. Like I said, it just arrived this morning, so it's so very exciting. One of the most exciting things is when you see a book for the first time, and of course it's been in your imagination for a long time, but to see a real thing. And I think books are beautiful objects as well, don't you? They are really something so lovely about something that is so beautifully designed and also so practical. So yeah, that's a kind of whistle stop. That's a kind of whistle stop tour of my book so far. I thought maybe we could end with just a little reading. I thought maybe I'll just read you, since it's just arrived, I'll read you the beginning of Diary of a Christmas Elf. So here we go. The diary starts on Tuesday. I'll show you, see that, Tuesday the 21st of October. So here we go. This is the very beginning of Diary of a Christmas Elf. Tuesday the 21st of October. Last night, I dreamt I was a Christmas elf. It was Christmas Day, and we were all at Father Christmas's lodge in the Arctic hills, celebrating another successful year. At one end of the room was a roaring fire, framed by garlands of holly, ivy, and mistletoe. At the other sat Father Christmas, flanked by his right hand and left hand elves. And in between sat the rest of us, row after row of red-faced toy-making elves, feasting, laughing, and joking. I was just tucking into my second turkey leg when Father Christmas stood and tapped his glass with a spoon to get our attention. We all fell silent. "Dearest elves," he said, sliding gracefully off his chair and onto his feet. Unfortunately, he's quite short, so all we could see behind the table was his red velvet hat. "Ah," said Father Christmas, thoughtfully. Steinar, his right-hand elf, and Ola, his left-hand elf, helped him to stand on the seat of his chair. Father Christmas mopped his face with his handkerchief, collected himself, and resumed his speech. "You've worked tirelessly all year, and I'm quite overwhelmed with gratitude. On behalf of all the children of the world, thank you, thank you, thank you." We all clinked glasses and drank huge mouthfuls of the most delicious mead. "Now, I know what you're all wondering," Father Christmas continued. "Who can it be? Who is my Christmas elf of the year?" the room filled with excited chatter. Well? An expectant hush descended. Without further delay, everyone looked round the room. My Christmas elf of the year is... An elf on the far table let out a yelp of excitement. The one and only... Steinar, the right-hand elf, cleared his throat impatiently. Tog! That was me. I was Christmas elf of the year. The room burst into wild applause. Up you get, said my mother. But I couldn't seem to get up from the table. It was as if my bottom was glued to my seat. Tog, get up. You're late. I opened my eyes. I wasn't in Father Christmas's house at all. I was in my bunk, in the tiny room I shared with my 4 younger brothers and sisters, Twig, Leaf, Plum, and Pin. My mother was shaking me by the shoulder. Your father and I are off to work. You need to get the little ones to school. Which was when I remembered who I really am. An unemployed, 160-year-old loser elf who's still living with his parents. There we go. That's the beginning of Diary of a Christmas Elf. Well, thank you so much for having me. Do enjoy the rest of the Festival of Discovery, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Bye for now.